Poqo was formed as the militant faction of the Pan-Africanist Congress during the 1960s and gained notoriety for its intense violent sabotage efforts. Unlike other resistant groups of that period, such as Umkhonto weSizwe, Poqo did not shy away from causing casualties and was recognized as the most anti-white underground movement of its era. Its goal was to overthrow the South African government and establish a socialist African state. The name Poqo translates to pure or alone in Xhosa, and the organization predominantly attracted support from the Western Cape and the Transkei.
In South Africa's remote Orange-Free State, some white farmers are patrolling their fields with guns. They're on edge following a recent spate of attacks claimed by black militants. Martin C. Mungle has more.
Gene Visser farms for a living, but he carries a rifle when he works. And these days, his farm hand is a South African policeman. The policeman has been placed here for protection. White farms along the border with Lesotho have been attacked at least 3 times by blacks. A radical group called the Azanian People's Liberation Army has always claimed responsibility. They want whites off what they say is their land. As Visser inspects his vandalized fence, he worries that he may be next.
Arguably the largest underground faction of the 1960s, Poqo's tactics deliberately involved murder. Their primary targets included policemen from Langa and Pau, perceived informants, as well as Transkei chiefs, viewed as supporters of the apartheid regime, and their followers. The organization operated on a structure similar to a communist cell, where members were unaware of each other's identities. Any member who divulged information about Poqo faced the death penalty, and approximately 10 individuals within the group were executed for treason. In line with its objective of causing turmoil and inciting rebellion, Poqo organized an attack in Paarl on 22 November 1962. A group of 250 armed men, equipped with axes, pangas, and various improvised weapons, marched from the Mbekweni location to the town, assaulting the police station, homes, and shops. In the course of this attack, they also killed 2 white individuals. They continued their assault with the brutal murder of a family camping at Beshi River in the Transkei on February 4, 1963. Norman and Elizabeth Grobler, along with their teenage daughters, Edna and Dawn, and Mr. Derek Thompson, were killed in their caravans. This incident instilled fear in people nationwide and prompted the government to crack down on any possible insurrection. Existing security laws were intensified when the Minister of Justice, B.J. Vorster, implemented the 1964 General Laws Amendment Act, commonly referred to as the Sabotage Act, and the 90-Day Law. This legislation designated sabotage as a capital crime and granted the minister authority for house arrest and detention without trial. Both Poqo and Umkhonto weSizwe responded with armed resistance to the injustices perpetuated by the white minority government, but Poqo posed a greater threat at the time. Its leaders were less recognized by security forces, and its tactics were significantly more violent, creating a movement that spread widespread fear. However, due to apartheid's oppressive measures and Poqo's intense anti-white rhetoric, it lacked the mass support necessary for survival and ultimately disintegrated. During the 1960s, there were tensions in South Africa between the government and groups advocating for black citizens. Following the events of 1976, confrontations between the state and African political organizations escalated. In the wake of the Soweto uprising, many students sought exile. The PAC's Azanian People Liberation Army, Apla, which succeeded Poqo, also operated in exile, although its activities were largely restricted due to bans and the ANC's increasing dominance as the more influential liberation movement. Numerous camps were set up for the military wing of the PAC, known as Apla. Some Apla members were housed at the Itumbi camp in Mbeya, Tanzania. A specific section of this camp referred to as Shanghai, served as the accommodation for members of the organization's Central Committee when they visited the area. The Ruvu camp stood out as another significant Apla base established by the Exile PAC in response to the June 16 Soweto uprisings. The settlement at Ruvu was initiated during PK Lebalo's leadership in 1978. It saw substantial growth under the guidance of Nyathi John Poqo in 1982, following the Tanzanian government's allocation of 440 hectares of land to the PAC. This initiative aimed to assist the organization in creating a self-reliant settlement alongside various developmental projects. Lebalo envisioned Ruvu as akin to the NC's June 16 detachment, which began at Novakatengwe camp in Angola in 1978 before relocating to Fesenda, further north across the Rio Donge. Initially, the Ruvu camp functioned as a small transit camp for PAC members, escaping the South African government's oppression post-Soweto uprisings, providing temporary housing for new recruits waiting for military training. From 1982 onward, as leadership within the PAC shifted, the camp underwent transformations to mirror the NC's settlement at Mazimbu and Dakawa, both of which housed the June 16 exile generation from South Africa. An in-depth examination of the NC's settlements suggests that their projects were more substantial than those of the PAC camps concerning scale and organization. However, starting in 1982, the PAC's Ruvu camp's activities expanded beyond merely offering refuge for activists. It evolved into a self-sufficient community where PAC members could gain skills beneficial for a liberated South Africa. The facilities included a clinic, classrooms, and a center for mechanical and agricultural training. From 1981 onward, the Ruvu camp became a focal point for ideological discussions and critiques regarding PAC leadership under Vusumuzi Make. The cadres at this camp insisted that leadership's authority should stem from the rank-and-file membership. They also raised concerns about financial mismanagement and criticized the extravagant lifestyles of both the PAC chairman, Vusi Make, and the entire Central Committee. The PAC in exile faced ongoing challenges throughout its existence. These issues included the suspension of its constitution, fragmented leadership, and corruption related to funds. The PAC leadership significantly struggled to establish itself as a unified liberation movement. This turmoil led to dissatisfaction among its members, who believed the party was lost and had diminished the respect it once commanded under the guidance of its founder, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who passed away on February 27, 1978. Many attributed the PAC's decline to Lebalo's leadership approach. He was criticized, among other things, for forming close ties with whites viewed as collaborators of the apartheid regime. This issue became a significant internal conflict for the PAC. As the community in the camp expanded, instances of misconduct began to rise. The Ruvu settlement frequently experienced infiltration by unruly elements from the PAC army. This trend intensified from 1981 onwards, with reports of punishment and various abuses surfacing. It's important to recognize that the camp housed individuals from diverse backgrounds and languages, each having established their own set of traditions and norms over the years spent in exile. Disputes among the inhabitants were commonplace, while some were trivial, stemming from drinking and womanizing on weekends. Others had significant political implications. To enforce discipline, the political leaders turned to corporal punishment for those who misbehaved. However, many regular PAC members became victims of the arbitrary authority of camp commanders who imposed corporal punishment indiscriminately, disregarding established organizational guidelines and policies. The aspiration for the future liberation of Azania kept the camp residents loyal. Some individuals endured the harsh conditions of the camp due to a lack of alternatives, while others, unable to continue living in such circumstances, deserted the organization and joined the NC. A few even chose to declare themselves refugees in different parts of Southern Africa, including Botswana, where the Duque refugee camp was established. The Arusha Consultative Conference took place in September 1978 to address various organizational issues. For example, the eager Apla members who wanted to return to South Africa to combat the apartheid regime were frustrated. They were also angered by the embezzlement of funds and the extravagant lifestyles of their political leaders in urban areas, while they themselves faced harsh living conditions in the camps. Another issue discussed at the conference was the ongoing power struggle between the two factions, led by Lebalo, a political figure, and Dantala, a military leader. The personal conflicts between them led to severe physical clashes among their factions, with attacks on one another, including knife assaults, becoming a frequent occurrence in the camps. This situation caused some members of the military command to step down out of fear for their safety. These conflicts clearly had a negative impact on the morale of cadres in the camps and damaged the reputation of the PAC both among its members in exile and in South Africa.
Typifying white civilians in the manner in which you did carte blanche, you would have violated international law.
We did not attack white civilians, but we destroyed European invaders, dispossessors, criminals. Because here you want to create a situation whereby our struggle is as recent as the PAC. And that's not the case. Our struggle against colonialism is as old as when the colonialists set their foot here and showed their sinister motives of dispossessing our forefathers of the land. And the whole struggle, the whole armed struggle, was the continuation of that. And actually we can draw the ancient wisdom from our forefathers. When Dingaan said to the Zulu warriors, Bulala Abathakathi, what did he mean? He meant that those dispossessors, Abathakathi, the Zulu warriors didn't ask among themselves who were the Abathakathis, who were the wizards, but they knew who the wizards were, and they were whites. And when Mushweshwe, King Mushweshwe of Basotho, in his wisdom, said, meaning that the whites will always have solidarity in oppressing the Africans. He drew that from experience, from the practical experience that was going on. And I dare say that the TRC is more concerned with the white life because even the questions are being filtered by a man who benefited hugely from the dispossession of our people. Because as far as I'm concerned, he who benefits by crime is guilty of that crime. And every white person in this country benefited from the crime of dispossession, benefited from the crime of colonialism, benefited from the crime of apartheid. But now you want to extract yourself from this crime. And it is so displeasing that the grandsons and daughters of Mushweshwe, of Shaka, of Sikukuni are now bearing the burden of their abusers. Because you abused us. All in all, the TRC doesn't encourage people to speak truth. And I dare say this whole farce, this whole circus is doomed for failure. It's doomed for failure for obvious reasons. Because you cannot reconcile the dispossessed and the dispossessor.